Welcome again to the old principal. 我就是老校长. Now, today's lesson will be number 303, occupational hazards. Occupational hazards. Now, what is an occupational hazard? 风险. 风险 is a hazard, and occupational is 职业上的风险. So every occupation has some hazards. I was a teacher, so now I'm going to tell you some of the hazards, 这个风险 of becoming a high school teacher and a high school principal. But before we do, let's listen to the story as Mrs. Ash reads it.
Story 303, Occupational Hazards. When I was a student, it looked to me like being a teacher would be lots of fun. When I became a teacher, I discovered that it was fun, but it took a lot more work than I had expected. After a while, I got to thinking about being a school principal. I thought how nice it would be just to sit in an office and have no classes to teach. But when I finally became a high school principal, I experienced new responsibilities and pressures. Disciplining students was a tricky business. I had to learn how to be stern enough to perhaps scare a naughty student into not misbehaving again. And yet, I needed to be compassionate enough to not totally discourage the student. In the process of dealing with these students, I was learning important principles that I could use when dealing with my own children. Another scary phenomenon was this. From time to time, parents of unqualified or mischievous students would come to talk with me. Of course, their goal was for me to accept their son or daughter as a student. What irritated me the most were the gifts that they brought. In fact, I hated to see people come with gifts of any kind because it made me wonder if something was wrong with their child. Another problem I experienced was providing leadership to people who were older than me. Among the Chinese, age is revered. But that was precisely my problem. I was the school principal and just barely into my 30s. At that time in Taiwan, high school principals were very old. In fact, it looked to me like they were a little too old. Fortunately, most of the teachers knew that I was a professional educator. My qualification was not my old age, but rather it was my knowledge and practice of education. And finally, I learned the meaning of the saying, "The buck stops here." Ultimately, I was responsible for everything.
Welcome back. Are you ready to begin? I'm ready. When I was a student, it looked to me like being a teacher would be lots of fun. Okay. Students, I guess, always think of these things. When I was a student, it just think, wow, 做老师太好玩了. It must be a lot of fun. But I discovered that it was fun, but it took a lot more work than I expected. 我所想象得到比还要多得多. It just took a lot of work. I had to spend a lot of time working on these lessons. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in this lesson going on. After a while, I got to thinking about being a school principal. This is after teaching for a while. And then I said, well, maybe I should try being a school principal. 中学校长不是更好吗? I thought, well, how nice it would be just to sit in an office and have no classes to teach. I mean, think about it. You just sit in the office and nothing to do. Well, I mean, there must be some things to do, but you don't have to teach. You don't have to prepare your lessons. 不用备课. So, man, being a principal, 做校长, it certainly would be a lot of fun. That's the way I thought. It would be so nice just to sit in an office and have no classes to teach going on. But when I finally became a high school principal, I experienced new responsibilities and pressures. When I finally 终于做中学校长, I experienced 经历, right? To experience something, new responsibilities and new pressures. Responsibilities, 责任, new responsibilities, and new pressures, 新的压力. Have you ever had new responsibilities and new pressures? I think this is a common thing that happens to all people, no matter whether they're a teacher or anything else. If you are upwardly mobile, that means that you are improving, and then your boss or your work will give you more pressure. And then that pressure includes new stresses, new responsibilities. Very, very common. All occupations, 所有的职业 have this going on. Disciplining students was a tricky business. Okay, discipline, 管教. So, to discipline students, 管教学生. So, you got this. Was a tricky business? What is tricky business? Okay. Let me just translate the meaning. 这件事情，这份工作 business 这份工作需要很多技巧啊 tricky business 需要很多技巧 Disciplining students was a tricky business. I had to learn how to be stern enough. Stern? Are you a stern person? Okay. Stern, 严厉. 连你的表情要严厉. You know. Are you stern enough? 足够严厉吗? To perhaps scare naughty students into not misbehaving again. So, why do you want to be 严厉? Okay? To perhaps 或许吓坏 scare them. Who is them? The naughty student. 这个调皮 student not to misbehave again. 不要再犯错，不要再行不好的事情，做不好。Okay? So, this is, we say extremes, 极端. The one extreme is that you are very stern. and your purpose is to scare people, 吓坏他们, make them, force them, scare them into being good. Of course, this is not a good reason, but sometimes for children and young people, this is the only way that works. 唯一的这个有效果的方法. But for adults, not the best idea. Anyway, going on, and yet, done. I needed to be compassionate enough not to totally discourage the student. 我还是要足够 compassionate. Well, what is compassion? Compassion is love or sympathy. Maybe sympathy is good. 同情，足够同情他们 are not to totally discourage the student. 不要完全叫那个学生失望. So you understand that the two extremes, 两个极端. One is to be stern and hard and scare people to be good. The other is to be compassionate, 要同情他们 and not to let them become discouraged. So there's a kind of a tension here, and you're always trying to find somewhere in between. Okay, going on. In the process of dealing with students, I was learning important principles that I could use when dealing with my own children. 在处理学生的过程啊, in the process of dealing with the students, I was learning important principles. I was learning important principles that I could use when dealing with my own children. 我所学的这个原则可以利用在我自己的两个儿子身上. So I was learning good things, and I could use those good things at home. Going on. Another scary, 可怕, right? 可怕. Okay. Another scary phenomenon. Okay. Phenomenon is 现象. 另一个可怕的现象 was this. From time to time, parents of unqualified or mischievous students would come to talk to me. I tell you, sometimes it was easier to deal with, 处理, the student problems, to deal with the student problems. But when their parents came, I tell you, it was just, sometimes I just could not figure out parents. The parents had, actually, I tell you, the parents sometimes had more problems than their children. It's true. It's true. So, from time to time, parents would come, 有时候父母亲就会来, of unqualified. Sometimes the student was not qualified to come to our school, and so 没有资格去我们学校. So they would come to me, 说服我, wanted me to become, to accept their son or daughter. Or sometimes these unqualified ones were also mischievous, mischievous, 调皮的学生啊。A misbehaving student is a mischievous student. 他不一定是坏蛋 okay? A mischievous student sometimes is just 他精力充沛 too much energy, so they tend to get into trouble. So these parents would come to talk to me at times. Going on? Of course, their goal was for me to accept their son or daughter as a student. 当然，这个是他们的目标，要我接受他的儿子、他的女儿作为我们的小生。So they would just wanted me to accept their students. But I'll tell you what really irritated me. I mean, really irritated me. Irritate, it is 有时候是生气. If you look it up in dictionary, 生气 or 使我不舒服，非常不舒服。Okay, what irritated me the most were the gifts they brought. 他们是带来了一些礼物给我。I remember, I wonder if I have time to tell this. I remember one time a father came to ask me to accept his son. His son was nice, not mischievous, but his IQ problem, his brain, 他的智商是有问题。And so when he came, and he often came to visit his son, I accepted his student, his son. And every time he came to the school, he would bring shoes for my children, for my two sons. You know, it's like 要讨好校长, okay? You want to appease or convince the principal, okay? So if this irritated me, 使我非常不舒服，有一点气, okay, going on. In fact, I hated to see people come with gifts of any kind because it made me wonder if something was wrong with their child. 事实上, I hated to see people come with gifts of any kind. I don't care what kind of gift. If they brought a gift to the school, it made me wonder, 使我怀疑. In this case, wonder means to 怀疑, to doubt, or wonder, or to think, is there something wrong with their child? If there was something wrong with their child. In fact, if they gave me a gift, my first thought was, okay, what's wrong with your child? Now, of course, I didn't say that out loud, at least not that directly. 不是那么直接说的. But to me, I always worried about that. 我非常不喜欢 people coming with gifts to give to me. Going on. Another problem I experienced was providing leadership to people who were older than me. Among the Chinese, age is revered. Okay? This was another problem I had. leading, 领导, people who were older than me. Now remember, when I first became principal, the first time I became principal, I was how old? I was 31 years old, 31岁. In fact, some people in Taiwan, they would say, 年轻有为. That was embarrassing. So for me, this was a problem because most people were older than me. The teachers were older than me. Among the Chinese, age is revered. What does it mean? Age is revered. 在中国人的世界，很尊敬年纪，年纪大就尊敬的多。Okay, revered 尊敬。Okay, to respect and reverence, to revere. Okay, all the same ideas of 尊敬 going on. And that was precisely my problem. I was the school principal and just barely into my 30s. 我是中学校长，而刚在30岁出头。30岁出头, barely into my 30s. I was young. Going on. At that time in Taiwan, high school principals were very old. In fact, it looked to me, 对我来说, they already had one foot in the grave. This is the way I looked at it. High school principals in the other high schools, okay, were very old, 非常年老. In fact, it looked to me like they already had one foot in the grave. 对我来说，看起来好像他们已经踏入 one foot, 踏入一个脚已经踏入坟墓 in the grave. It's we often use this as a term. They already have one foot in the grave, meaning very old. They may still not die immediately, but they were very old. Going on. Fortunately, most of the teachers knew that I was a professional educator. 幸亏, most of the teachers in our school, 知道 I was a professional educator. I had studied education, and in fact, I had taught in high school in America. Okay, so professional, 专业教育家. Now, I may be young, but I had been teaching in America. So most of the teachers knew this, and that was good. Going on. My qualification was not my age, but rather my knowledge and practice of education. 我的资格何在? My qualification was not my age. I mean, obviously, 30岁出头 is not very old, okay? But rather, 反而 it was my knowledge, 我懂的知识 and practice of education, 做法，教育的知识跟做法。This is where my qualification came. Not because I was so old. In fact, 现在我是老校长，我真的老。I am already 40 years past that time. I am almost 40 years past the time I first became a principal. Okay? That's a long time ago. So now I do have the old age. Hence, 我是老校长. Okay. And finally, I learned one other thing. 最后我就学到另外一个 the meaning of the saying. 我有一种说法 the buck stops here. Okay, the buck stops here. We have a saying to pass the buck. That means 退责任，不愿意这个负责任。Okay, 退责任。So the buck stops here simply means that you are willing to accept the responsibility for everything. That is what a principal is all about. That's what principals do. Okay, that's all the time I have for today. Our email address is theoldprincipal@gmail.com. And our website is www.theoldprincipal.org. Hey, it's been great to be with you. I hope that you'll join us next time for another interesting lesson and bring a friend to watch it with you. Until then, bye-bye.